The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not be afraid any longer, little flock, for your Father is pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your belongings and give alms. Provide money bags for yourselves that do not wear out, an inexhaustible treasure in heaven that no thief can reach, nor moth destroy. For where your treasure is, there also will your heart be. Gird your loins and light your lamps, and be like servants who await their master's return from a wedding, ready to open immediately when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds vigilant on his arrival. Amen, amen, I say to you, he will gird himself, have them recline at table, and proceed to wait on them. And should he come in the second or third watch, and find them prepared in this way, blessed are those servants. Be sure of this: if the master of the house had known the hour when the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come." Then Peter said, "Lord, is this parable meant for us or for everyone?" And the Lord replied, "Who then is the faithful and prudent steward, whom the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master on arrival finds doing so. Truly I say to you, the master will put the servant in charge of all his property. But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants, to eat and drink and get drunk, then that servant's master will come on an unexpected day and at an unknown hour, and will punish the servant severely, and assign him a place with the unfaithful. That servant who knew his master's will, but did not make preparations nor act in accord with his will, shall be beaten severely. And the servant who is ignorant of his master's will, but acted in a way deserving of a severe beating, shall be beaten only lightly. Much will be required of the person entrusted with much, and still more will be demanded of the person entrusted with more." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
One of the aspects of our church in this modern age that oftentimes the church is criticized for and mocked for in our modern age is the persecution of heretics, right? That took place often in the Middle Ages. Now, there's something kind of ironic about this, I think, that in our modern age, right, we might think that we're better than those people, but as we're seeing in our woke culture, right, we still have heresies that are persecuted. They're just not related to Christian belief. Heresies are a danger in every age. Ideas have consequences. And even in our modern age, it's recognized. Again, it's just this time it's not the church who's deciding who is heretical. Now it's our modern secular culture, right, canceling different ideas and people. Now, heresy in the church is something a little bit different than what we think of in our modern age. And I actually think it's crucially important. Heresies can steal souls from God. Heresies can lead people out of the church. Heresies can lead to doubt in the faith. And I would submit to you that there are two heresies circling in the church that are doing tremendous damage to souls. And they are related to the idea of faith. Faith. Our second reading today from the Hebrews said, "Faith is the realization of what is hoped for, and evidence of things not seen." What exactly is faith? In our modern age, and especially within the church, not just the Catholic Church, but in many Christian churches, there are two extremely damaging heresies circulating about faith. And I would imagine that if many of us in this church today were questioned about what faith actually is, many of us would be heretics. Right? Thankfully, we don't persecute heretics anymore, right? Good news. But still, this heresy is prevalent. There are two major heresies in the church today when it comes to the idea of faith. What exactly is faith? Many people believe a heresy about faith when it comes to the power of God. Many people also believe a heresy about faith when it comes to belief in God. And I want to talk about both of those today, because I would suggest that these two heresies are perhaps the greatest heresies that are leading people away from faith in God today. The first heresy has to do with the power of God, something I encounter very often, even on a regular basis, interacting with different Christians and different Catholics. There's an idea of faith out there that says that if you believe in God enough, He will always answer your prayers. If you believe in God enough, if your faith is strong enough, then nothing harmful will ever happen to you. No desolation will ever encounter you in your faith. You will never suffer. You will never experience injustice. If only you believe enough. If you get sick or you have a loved one who is sick, if you just believe enough, your loved one will survive or be healed. How often do you hear people say things like that? When they have a relative who's sick or something like that, and they say, well, don't worry though, I have faith. What exactly does that mean? It's that idea. And it is heresy. It is heresy. What did Jesus tell his disciples at the Last Supper? He said, in this world you will have trouble, but have no fear, because I have overcome the world. Each of the first apostles, what happened to them in their ministry? They were persecuted, beaten, often tortured, and killed for the faith. Even throughout the lives of the saints, when you read the lives of the saints, it's often filled with immense suffering. Many of the saints even dying at very young ages due to different illnesses. To say that if you just have strong enough faith, God is going to protect you from all harm, or He's going to hear all of your prayers, it is heresy. And it is an extremely damaging heresy. One of the most common reasons why people leave the church, why is it? It's because their prayers were not answered, or they experienced some terrible injustice or suffering. And it leads them to think that I guess the faith is incorrect. I guess these beliefs I've had all my life are wrong because God did not hear my prayer. It is an extremely damaging heresy in the church today. And we need to be very careful about correcting people when they say pious platitudes that are actually damaging heresy like that. The second heresy when it comes to faith is in the belief in God. Many people think today that faith is to believe something even though there is no evidence for it or no reasons for it. Faith is completely unrelated to rational thought. Again, something you'll hear very often in religious education classes or confirmation classes. Somebody will ask a great question, a difficult question, and the teacher will say something like, well, I guess that's why it's belief, right? No, please don't say that. Faith is not believing things even though there's no evidence or no reasons. What faith means is that you believe in things that are invisible because there's evidence, because there are reasons. God truly, literally is invisible. Angels are invisible. The sacramental graces we receive in the sacraments, they are invisible. Faith is to believe in things that are invisible. But it's not because it's irrational or illogical. Again, in our modern age, we so often get this backwards. So much skepticism about faith in God. Karl Marx once said that faith in God is the opium of the masses. right? It's not something that's actually real, but it makes people feel good about their existence, just because it's belief in things that are invisible. Now, if you think about that, it's actually kind of silly to say something like that. We believe in things all the time that we can't see. I imagine all of you probably believe that I have a mother, or at least had a mother, right? If she had passed away, which, thank God, she's still alive, right? And yet most of you have never seen her, never met her. I guarantee that everybody in this church believes in something called gravity. Gravity literally is invisible. It's unmeasurable. It is immaterial. I imagine many of you have never been to Australia, but you've probably believed that it exists, even though you haven't seen it. There are all sorts of things we believe that are invisible, or things that we cannot see, or we believe on the testimony of others. That is faith when it comes to God. But it's not irrational. It's not illogical. It is irrational to say that God doesn't exist. We can even know it by reason. Where did this world come from? Even in modern science, so many people think that modern science has somehow disproved God. Think about what Big Bang cosmology means. That about 14 billion years ago, according to these Big Bang cosmologists, the universe literally had a beginning. How in the world does that disprove God? That the universe is not infinite, but rather it had a beginning? Is there anything else that you can think of that began to exist in time and didn't have some sort of cause, some person or thing that caused it? Just so with the universe. The fact that the universe began to exist means somebody had to have caused it. In our faith, we believe in the resurrection, right? And over the past 2,000 years, we believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead and was taken up into heaven. And over the last 2,000 years, has anybody ever found Jesus' dead corpse? Has anybody ever found the corpse of Mary, who we believe was assumed into heaven? Think about all those 12 apostles who claimed to have seen him rise from the dead, and they were all murdered and tortured for their belief. There's all sorts of reasons for our belief, even in our modern age. Again, so much of what people discover about modern science or modern archaeology continues to just provide more evidence for the faith. One of the most striking things, I think, was in the early 2000s. There was an archaeologist digging up in the Holy Land. He was looking for the city of Sodom, and he found where there was believed to be. And guess what they found deep below the ground? They found ruins of a city with a sort of lava-like material on top of all the different objects in the city. They took it to a scientist who had no idea where it came from. And he said basically this was remains of some sort of heat blast. What do you read about in Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible? It was destroyed by fire coming down from heaven. Even obscure scriptural passages are finding evidence, even in our modern age. To have faith does not mean that no harm is ever going to come to you. Rather, to have faith means you are obedient to God despite the consequences. You choose to be faithful to God and His commandments, no matter what might happen to you. It doesn't mean you believe God will hear every prayer. It doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen to you. It's the opposite. You choose to be faithful anyway. And faith is anything but belief in things that are invisible with no evidence at all. There is so much evidence for our faith. Our faith is not just one hypothesis among many. There are reasons. There are evidence. So many people who become Catholic, the reason why they become Catholic is because they literally study their way into the church, realizing the truth of it all. It is so important in our modern age that we stop these heresies that seem to be pious platitudes about the faith, because so many people are leaving the church because of it. They don't want to believe in something that's irrational, that doesn't have any evidence. They don't want to believe in something that is blatantly contradicted throughout their life when God doesn't answer every single one of their prayers. Faith is the realization of what is hoped for. It is the evidence, things not seen.